Welcome to the program, Alice Slater. Alice Slater and I go way back, I guess 20 years or so, watching the human condition with some chagrin, with good reason, and so forth. But she's a lawyer, I think, and also she's been involved with understanding things in a comprehensive, progressive way for a long time. She's been watching the global warming issue for a while, and we've both watched with great interest the great demonstration that occurred this last Sunday with 300 to 400,000 people filling the streets of Manhattan and resonating around the world, which is encouraging. But Alice, so good to see you again and doing a program.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah. You've been onto that thing about global warming for a long time.
Well, I've been on to energy.
Yeah.
It started with my interest in abolishing nuclear weapons.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And since every nuclear reactor is a bomb factory, it led me into working for sustainable energy even before global warming, but just so that we weren't using nuclear power, which is a proliferation danger. I mean, that's how India and Pakistan and Israel got their nuclear weapons, from their peaceful nuclear power reactors. So I got into sustainable energy, and then, of course, we learned about global warming and that we had to limit our carbon on the planet.
Yeah, well, I think we've talked on this in the past, and so I'm not sure we're on the same page, but maybe we are. I don't know. But I don't think there may be two separate issues, maybe, because I don't think the energy, nuclear energy, contributes to global warming.
Oh no, it definitely
it doesn't. But so it's a different issue.
No, it definitely does, because.
Oh, it does. Okay, explain it.
Because the whole fuel cycle is mining, milling, recycling. I mean, I went to Paducah, Kentucky, where they enrich the uranium, and it's attached to a coal factory. So they're using carbon to make it, although while it's burning, it's not creating carbon.
Oh, I see. In that sense, I guess everything.
And also, it's so costly that if you took, Amory Lovins writes about this, if you took the money that you spent on a nuclear reactor and put it into solar or wind or efficiency, you get much more carbon reduction than putting it into a nuclear power plant, which is billions of dollars.
That's something. Yeah, they are, with all the safeguards they have to put into it and everything like that. There was Amory and his wife. What was her?
Hunter.
Hunter. Yeah. I don't know. Did they split up or something?
They
were.
So,
I always
but they
had
have
them
the
as
Rocky
a team.
Mountain Institute. I think they're still a team in work.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, yeah. Well, he's really good, a comprehensive reader of
that. But
that.
he did quite a big study on how nuclear power contributes to global warming because of the costs, because of the other carbon factors in the production and the storage and the mining and the milling. So. There's a whole group being supported by the nuclear industry for whom Giuliani is a spokesperson in New York, saying it's clean, it's safe, it doesn't contribute to global warming, but I don't think that's
true. There would be, particularly if you start thinking systems, which we probably should have more systems, interconnection between everything. You could probably connect everything to everything else in a certain kind of way, because everything is interconnected and so forth. But wasn't it encouraging that we had 300, 400,000 people filling the streets?
Whatever it was fabulous.
Did you see that coming? Are you in on the under circle that could see that was going to be so explosive?
I was helping plan it, and I saw how many different groups. What was so great about it was, they had it in different. We lined up from Columbus Circle all the way up to 86th Street.
Yeah.
In different groups, like we had nuclear-free and carbon-free. Then we had the anti-war groups that were saying war is not good for the planet. Of course, it spends a lot of carbon. War.
Boy,
it's the biggest carbon expenditure is war.
I'm against war, aren't you?
Right. So, and we had labor, we had church groups, we had social welfare and social justice groups, we had indigenous people, and there were so many movements that came together to make this march.
Help me out a little bit. You've been watching that for a while. Now, they've had other Doha, and they've had other meetings about global warming, and they would go there and everybody would say, yeah, it's this and that, and then nothing would happen. And it was very disappointing. You have a few people hanging around on the street corner, but now you had a massive input, and there must have been a lot of organization, or it's coming to a fruition. Naomi Klein has written that major book on that issue. So it's coming up in a way that is sort of unprecedented out of the protest that has been trying to be waged by a lot of good people over the decades.
Well,
really.
People are getting it, and we're seeing pictures of polar bears, floating around on the ice there, and the glaciers are falling. I mean, people.
It's true.
It's becoming much more overwhelming even than when Al Gore made his movie years ago. What's good, though, now, which is different than when Al Gore was doing it, is that we know we have all the solutions. There's this professor out at Stanford University, Mark Jacobson, who's got something called the solutionsproject.org.
Okay.
And he did an article in Scientific American that by 2030, the whole planet could be on sun, wind, geothermal, hydro, or clean energy. And what Naomi Klein is saying in her book.
Yeah, you got it? You got to it?
Well, I know about it. I haven't read it yet, but I heard her. She was speaking at a lot of these climate meetings. We had different
Amy
panels.
had her on for a long time the other day,
But what she's saying, why, if we have the sun, if we have the wind, why isn't it happening? Because you've got this old system, the corporate, fossil fuel industry, the nuclear industry that's so entrenched, and they're buying the Congress. You got the Koch brothers that put up like $300 million for candidates. They're in the fossil fuel industry. I mean,
they are.
Our democracy is very corrupt. The reason we don't have solar all over the planet and wind and hydro is because we have a failure of democracy. Our governments are corrupted by this old line patriarchal fossil fuel industry that's buying everybody.
Why didn't we have non-polluting things, say, in the year 1900? The wind was there, the tidal power was there, it was all there.
Then we were doing we went from whale oil to coal.
But what I'm saying is all the non-polluting things were available. I mean, the wind was there, it doesn't change.
Well, we used
Why didn't we go that way rather than going fossil fuel?
Because now we need a lot of technology. Solar panels need silicon. It's because of the modern technology that we can harness the sun and the wind. We used to have windmills like the Dutch windmills.
And polders.
But that couldn't have powered a whole country.
So we were not able to have it.
We didn't have the technology.
So that's something that I'm interested in. It was not available to us to have this solar possibility
we had water mills, we had windmills, but they were like, the burning and the heating was coming from whale oil before we went to coal.
That's right, it was. Or kerosene even then came.
But we
whale oil, that's right,
then we went to oil
Moby Dick,
and coal, and then now we're...
So we had to, then what I'm trying to say is we had to go through the period of fossil fuels in order to get to where we are now.
Exactly.
So it's getting a sense of history. It's a change of history, and we've had to do that all in terms of the technological growth or development of human society with extended consciousness and technology.
Yes, but there's an upside and a downside. Some of that technology was very damaging, like plutonium is dangerous for 250,000 years. I mean, we invented the bomb and the nuclear reactor, and we're stuck with this waste. I mean, all of recorded history is only 5,000 years, and you got this dangerous substance that we've created that we don't even know how to safely store yet. So we have to be.
Well, that's good. I like that.
The technology can hit us in the back. I mean, so when we did the coal and the oil and everything was cheap and wonderful, and we had transportation and building, and we were like on this, exponential growth process.
Well, wait a minute. Exponential is something other than, most of that's been arithmetic. I don't think there's been anything very influential. I mean, exponential until we get to the current.
When you think of how we came from 1900 to 2000
I'd
with
like to
cars, airplanes, space, that's huge leaps of technology.
Yeah, but there was
But in the process, we created a downside. Like, we found out that all of this extraction and burning of everything is hurting our atmosphere, our oceans, our air, our water, and we have to readjust in order to maintain our life support.
But I'm trying to get it. It was interesting. You went back to there, 19 or something. But I'm just thinking, how far back can we go? How large a context can we put the context of change within the social order of mankind, within an evolutionary context? How far back can we go?
We're in a huge shift.
Yeah.
We're in a huge shift now.
What is it?
It's the biggest shift we've ever experienced now.
Wait a minute. The biggest shift. Now, I'm wondering just if we could put that sentence into context. Are we talking about a shift like, for instance, the establishment of the United States of America against the feudal order in Europe?
No.
That was a big one. French Revolution was a big one.
Well, we're talking politics.
You know, the Second World War was a big one.
No, we're talking about the discovery of agriculture, the discovery of written language 5,000 years ago and recorded history.
Right.
This is a whole new shift. This is
thank you.
When the Mayans were talking about their prophecy, right, that the whole world was going to end.
Yeah, it didn't. Yeah.
It was like this. It didn't end, but this whole process has shifted, and I think it started with our landing on the moon and seeing the Earth for the first time, that we actually saw the finite beauty of our planet.
Well,
that was like, it changed human consciousness.
That's what remember Carl Sagan's Cosmos? Everybody was tuned into that.
But it did. It changed.
Were you there? Did you remember that day when they landed on the moon?
Yes, I had. I woke my children up to watch it.
Well, I had a bunch of, listen, this is me. I've always had a lot of, interesting people around me, poets and whatnot, as well as scientists and all that. But we had a group of people in our living room. And the two kids, our children were calling around and everything. 69, right? It was 69.
Yeah, I woke up my children.
And we had these poets and these really clever, really smart people. And we were watching it. We'd gotten a television set to watch it. It was a big event. Television was kind of new even then still. It was relatively new. It had been around for a while. But
we had it in the 40s.
Well, it didn't really.
49.
49?
My uncle
49 was television?
My uncle was a banker
at
Bankers Trust. He lived in the Bronx.
Yeah.
And their client was RCA. And they gave him an experimental television set. It was like a 4-inch screen. And I remember everybody was in their apartment when there was the Joe Louis World Champion. They would call him up and tell him when there was going to be a television program.
Yeah.
And that was in the 40s. But, by the 50s and 60s.
It'd be late 40s or so.
After the war.
I was middle class in Detroit. My dad was a lawyer, and we had a television set. The people next door had one in the corner in 1946, after the Second War.
That was a big TV.
You're too young to have been really cognizant much like I was.
8 years old.
Yeah, you were just a kid. I was almost, but anyway, they put it in the corner and there was no television programming in Detroit at all.
They didn't have programming.
They didn't have videotape yet. They didn't have the beginning of the industry and everything like that, but we used to look at the test pattern.
We've come a long way, baby.
We've come now, but I'd like to extend that if I could. That's good to get you on a page that I'd like to get to, because you're saying it began back with 5,000 in there. I would say
maybe. Well, it's that kind of
But why don't we extend it back a little bit more, if we can, okay? Just for the hell of it, and just for thinking and everything like that. As way as I can understand, it seems to me to be pretty much general agreement, almost into a generalized principle that can be scientifically vouchsafed, that our species, we're all African, and that we emerged out of Homo erectus as a species. It was right around 200,000 years ago.
Right.
Our species appeared in evolution.
And 5,000 years ago, we had the written word.
There's a long, yes, that's the alphabet.
That's another big change.
That's a big jump, because you know what that is? Think about it for a second. Think about it. Okay, now we're talking about how we got this, we got to do something by next Tuesday or something. And everything. But anyway, the thing is, that's like 10,000 generations, okay?
Right, but let's think about
No, but that was
now.
our species.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I'm wanting you not to get focused on the immediate. I'm trying to get over that longer context to get at what's going on. That's exactly the point, if I could. And that there's 10,000 generations. And I think we're all African. We all come out of Africa. There was a migration outward. We were hunting and gathering for at least 190,000 years of our existence on the planet. the Aborigines that got to Australia by 50,000.
But what about
I had
today?
my DNA done, and I was traced to an individual by DNA with the modern science to an individual that existed related to me in DNA. It can be done. Women can do it. Mitochondria. That you can do it.
I know, but
80,000 years ago, a person lived in Abyssinia. Now the point is that's their that, and then we get to where about 8,000 years ago, they finally got the means by which they could make agriculture and get security of food, which made possible civilization.
Right.
Ever since there's been civilization, I would suggest, because you're talking about the leadership and how we're, the immediate problems that exist within we could even get down to the presidential election or something.
I know.
But ever since then, as far as I can read things in a very comprehensive way, trying to understand it, it's always been a small group, whether it's Nebuchadnezzar or a pharaoh or the emperor of Rome or the hereditary families of Europe, where you had a small number of people who controlled everything,
right,
and everyone else was
rolling
around in the mood.
So nothing benefit.
So what I'm trying to say.
But we can't do that anymore.
But just to get the thing. So are we talking about an event that punctuated equilibrium when new species appear out of? We understand evolution. It's no longer a God created it or something. People still have belief in creation stories and so forth. We understand how things have come to be. Are we coming to the point, if you extend that out or get that longer perspective, and now we've got possible parallel universes with string theory beyond Einstein and understanding the universe. So, I mean, we're coming to know things. Are we coming to a point where we're transcending the Homo sapien era on this planet? A speciation, not just a change historically.
This is not my area.
Well, no, but you were bringing it up.
I'm saying that mankind, I'm going back to agriculture.
Oh, you don't want to take
to writing.
Okay.
To seeing the earth for the first time in our lifetime.
Okay, you want to limit it to that. Okay.
And to look at what that means for us today in terms of 400,000 people marching in the street last week.
Okay, you want to get back to that.
Why were 400,000 people? How did that happen?
Right.
In terms of what are the forces now? You made a very good point.
What point?
That the elites have been running the world all
forever,
the way through.
And they still do.
But we can't permit it anymore because this is the existential. Let me just finish.
Yeah, okay, do.
This is the existential moment where we have the power to do so much damage to the climate that we won't have life as we know it, or to destroy each other with nuclear weapons, we have 16,000 nuclear weapons on the planet, and right now, our president is pushing Putin up against the wall. We are expanding NATO.
Yeah, I know.
We promised Gorbachev that if he didn't object to a unified Germany when the wall came down, which was like a miracle,
NATO to the east,
we promised Gorbachev we would not expand NATO.
Right, we have.
And now we've taken all of Eastern Europe, and now we were actually proposing it to Ukraine. Where Russia has their ports in the Crimea, they had a 99-year lease. I mean, how would we feel if Russia was taking Canada or Mexico into his military alliance?
Well, that brings it around to a different level of consideration. Yeah, if you want to bring it down to a political
this is what
context.
We're facing right now. When you're saying the elites ran it, that is true.
Yeah.
But that's what's driving this. There's the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned against. We're now in another war with Syria, and the arms manufacturers are making a fortune.
Yeah.
When we could literally stop this war, we're selling 73% of the arms to these guys, and now we have this big coalition with Saudi Arabia and Jordan, and we could make them stop selling arms. We don't have to be bombing.
We? The people?
The United States of
America.
The United
States.
Leading
okay,
this.
You're saying that. Okay,
That's
so you want to talk.
This.
You want to talk about it in normal political terms. Okay, we can talk that way if you want.
We're not normal. You're talking about the elites. The
elites
one
of the things
here.
I asked you is
they're in this country.
What I was trying to get is a historical perspective of the extension of human consciousness through technology and the implications. We agreed we would not have been able to have solar panels in
Yeah,
1900
if we didn't
because
have
we were
this.
not evolved.
But we have now this incredible technology.
Which, okay.
But we have an immature psychology.
Well,
you
we
know,
have an
and we
insecure-
have
How long
and
have
an
we-
insecure polity.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to get at is a larger, what's going on? I don't think we know what's going on.
I know what's going
Oh,
on.
you do because you think of a political, what do you,
Look, we're people. We're human beings on
yeah,
a planet,
yeah.
right? I mean, we now have technology. We can
Well,
see what we have.
let's-
We have the internet where we can talk to everybody all over the planet. We
We
could
didn't have
never
that
do
when
that
we were
before.
young, did we?
Never.
Remember we had number 2 pencils?
No, I mean,
and
look at
slates
how
that we
look
wrote
at
on?
what has just happened in our lifetime, even in the last 20 years.
Thank you. Now you want to get it down that way?
So
We can talk that way
now
if you
we
want.
have to look at what are the politics of that. Well, how do we manage this
All right.
as human beings who are still here? We're not in the next evolution
What-
yet. We're
what-
still in this evolution
Okay,
from those
okay.
ancestors
Now you're beginning
you
to
talked
think.
about.
Now you're beginning to think in a larger context. We may be a new way of being in universe emerging that is not political, is not
But
historical.
we have to be political
No,
because
well-
the people who are running the place are killing us.
So you want
They're
to be.
bombing
You want to
the-
limit it.
They're
okay,
bombing the
you want-
hell out of Syria.
I know that.
Right?
I know
They're,
that.
they're
I agree with
burning
you.
coal and carbon and
Yeah.
nuclear, and
Yeah.
they're building. The Times just did an article.
Yeah.
$330 billion for new nuclear weapons over the next 10 years, where we haven't even used them since Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Why are we spending that kind of money?
Okay.
Why?
Why?
Who's
Why?
running
No,
the show?
tell me why.
Because that's the elite that you talked about.
Well, wait a minute. So you want to find
And
the
they're
enemy?
making
You want to
money.
find the enemy
Well, the
that's
enemy are
causing
the
the trouble?
people that are
It's the
making
elite.
money off
It's the
that.
ones who are making the money and the elite,
Yeah,
and they're
the
the enemy. And so you
corporations.
want to identify.
This is what
That's what you want to see. That's
this is-
political. Yeah.
This is what Naomi Klein is talking
Well, that-
about.
no, what
the
she's
corporations
talking-
are killing the
And
climate.
that's the context in which that's a normal context like you could talk about. That's okay. That's not talking. No, it's not talking about a change and the idea.
Well, but it was a huge change to have 400,000 people marching this
that
week.
was a
that was a big harbinger
okay. That
of
brings
some
it down.
change.
All right, you and I were talking. I don't know if we mentioned it, and we were talking
No.
maybe before the camera. But you've been going Doha, and they had these things about. Oh, you had inconvenience truth. People were coming. There was science. This is coming and everything. And people, good people. Amy Goodman would go always to these meetings. They'd have a thing, and they'd say, "We got to do something about global," and there would be nothing happen. Wait, let me finish. That had nothing happened. People would stand around the corner. Damn it, we can't get anything done. Now, all of a sudden, in this moment, 400,000 people filled it, and it was all over the place and everything like that. Something new is emerging in terms of the evolution of human consciousness.
Exactly.
Okay?
Well, we had Occupy Wall Street, the change,
Occupy
the
Wall
whole
Street.
thinking of America, because
Well,
they
that gets
talked
down to
about, and
economics.
the world. They took. Well, this is what we're talking about. The
All right,
1%.
why not?
You talked about the elites all through history, from
Yeah,
Nebuchadnezzar.
right.
They Occupy Wall Street talked about the 1% and
Yeah.
the 99%, and people all over the world got it. We got that the 99% is being oppressed by the 1%.
Well, so there's nothing new. It's always been a few people
Right,
running
but now
everything.
it's got to be new.
Why? Why?
Because we
Why?
have the ability to destroy ourselves with nuclear weapons and to destroy the planet with this untrammeled corporate greed that keeps burning coal and oil and drilling and doing all the things that are contributing to the climate warming up and the floods and the fires and
Yeah.
the droughts. So we're in trouble right now. The planet, Mother Earth, is in trouble.
So
Mother Earth is
you do
crying
want
out.
to avoid seeing it in other than the normal political historical context. You don't want to be seeing it in a comprehensive context. So what's causing it? Why do they do that? Why are they doing
Why do
it?
they
What's
do
the source
that?
of the
power?
what is
Power
the,
corrupts,
what it-
and
no.
absolute power
With all
corrupts.
due
Absolutely,
respect, darling,
Lord
with all
Acton.
due respect, as Lord Acton, and it is, as you probably know, power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Right.
That's correct.
Right.
Not power corrupts.
Well-
That's a loaded term for political purpose, okay? So I just make the point. You're making a point for a political purpose that you have an identity wrapped up in, and I can understand it. It's okay if you want to talk that way, like the news.
But why do you
But
think
it's going on.
happening?
Well, I don't know.
I do.
Okay, well, I wished I were so sure as you
I
seem
think
to
it's
be.
bad. people
We got the
doing
bad
bad
guy.
things
The
that
bad
have power over
The
us.
bad guys are the guys with power and with
Yeah, and they're doing bad things.
So that's a
I mean, you
norm.
don't have to be a rocket scientist to look around and see when the Koch brothers are spending $300 million to buy the U.S. Congress.
Why are they
so
doing
that they
that?
vote, so that they'll vote for coal and oil, so
Right.
that they'll make money in their business.
Yeah, but
That's what it is. It's
Well,
about
can't we
greed.
yeah, but can't
It's almost like
oh.
in the 70s we had lust. You know, the whole planet was going through lust.
Lust?
You know, there was
What
like all this
lust?
free. Think about this. The 70s we had all this, you know, free sex, and then came AIDS and herpes, and now we got greed.
Well, that's a strange
No, I'm just
reading of the
thinking-
70s. That's not the way I
Well,
remember
no, but
the
there
70s
was, it was
at
like
all.
open marriage. It was very open. Like all the puritanical stuff fell away.
Well, it was
And
hippies.
then you had like an excess, and then we suffered for it. And now you're having an excess of greed. You're having an excess of greed where the 1% is making so much money, and the middle class is hurting, and the kids are all in debt, and nobody's getting jobs. You know, there's homelessness and more poverty in America. There's like an excess of greed. This is what we saw in this Roosevelt documentary where
Wasn't that great? Ken
they
Burns is
came
so
in
good
and
at
helped
making
the people,
documentaries.
the
You can
gov-
educate people for that. Yeah, he was really good.
But
yeah.
it showed the times, even with Teddy Roosevelt with the trust
Yeah,
busters,
yeah.
and then Franklin Roosevelt
Right.
with the social programs
Right.
after the. Now we're in the same kind of a moment. However,
Uh-huh.
we've not been in the moment where we've seen the planet, where we're all connected.
Okay,
where
now you're getting at
where
some of
we're
the-
threatening the climate.
Uh-huh.
You know, where we have weapons of mass destruction that didn't exist when Roosevelt was president that can destroy
That's
the whole
right.
planet.
Well, that's good. That's
we
a trend
have
that
all
you.
these
That's a trend
things
that you're
that change
That's
things.
that's what I'm trying to say. You're getting at a trend where you can see technologically we've been in a condition where we were protected in our impotence, like gestating in the womb. In the 16th, 17th century, we go conquer the tribe in the other valley and beat them on the head, and realpolitik, and
Yeah,
whoever's
but
got
you
the
couldn't-
army, and all the
but you
realpolitik.
couldn't ruin life on Earth yet.
Yeah, I know, but what I'm trying to say, it's an evolutionary process socially of the whole human organization and everything. And now we've come to a time that is going to be still read in terms of the historical understanding of what's been going on. Or is there a larger context in which what's causing, and you get down, if I could, you make the point, I think it's really well, it'd be good if we could have a chapter and verse. I believe it's correct, but it's only since about 1970
When we
that the
saw the
weapons,
Earth
do you probably remember, do you remember 82?
in Central Park.
No, not 80, I'm sorry, not 80, 62. Or 68, when was it, the Cuban Missile? Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was in
Never
the 60s.
been so scared. They came within a hair's breadth of destroying civilization.
We've
Remember?
come within it
Do you-
many times. Did you read this latest book by Eric Slosser
No,
about
I
all
haven't
the
seen it.
nuclear accidents? Do you know when we passed the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty,
No.
the Congress, I have the congressional record, there were 38 airplanes that crashed carrying nuclear weapons. And none of them ever went off. Like, luckily, one spewed a little plutonium in Greenland and another one in Spain.
Yeah.
One is still under the ocean off the coast of Georgia. They never even found it.
Yeah.
And this General Lee Butler, who was the commander of all the forces under Clinton, I guess, he grounded all the airplanes. He couldn't believe it. And now they're, like last year, 6 missiles were missing with nuclear warheads that went from North Dakota to Mississippi by airplane. They didn't even know they were gone.
Should we not have had...
We've just been lucky.
Wasn't it, well, maybe.
We're pushing our luck.
Maybe evolution at 99, let's get back to that for a minute. Thinking in the larger picture, if we can, rather than the narrow, biased political view
But
of who
that's
the
not
enemy. Yeah, I know,
biased.
but
That's
facts are facts that are facts that are different. But 99.9%, that goes 999% of the species that have ever existed have gone extinct. So maybe we're meant to go extinct.
Yeah, but
Is
nobody
that
ever
what
had
you-
our intellect.
No, well, okay, but that is
We
a
have
fact.
the intellect. We
That
can
is-
see. You're talking later about
How is
string
it-
theory. For goodness sakes, there's so many
String-
things, 10
string-
dimensions that we don't even know about. I
Well,
mean,
that's a possibility.
we have so many possibilities
that we are
right
a white
now.
hole. We might be a white hole. There are parallel universes possible. We're learning.
But we never knew any of this.
No, that's what I'm trying to make the point.
Right.
Is that we've got a point where the extended technology, we've been protected against wiping ourselves out for 200,000 years of evolutionary development.
And now
of the
we're
Homo
not.
Now we're not. So that's what I'm trying to get at. On the destructive side, I think it's chapter and verse correct. The weapons finally. And just remember, all political organization, political legitimacy was established by whoever had the biggest club. Boom. And then you have a PR.
We're still up against
We're still
that.
in that context, okay? And
'Cause
we've
they
inherited
still have
that.
a big club.
Okay, we understand that. But now the weapons have become species lethal for our whole species.
Right, and we still have
Even
it.
at the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, there would have been a few scraggling human beings that exist in New Guinea.
Yeah, no, but
okay,
now
do you
it's
understand?
different.
There's a difference between when was it Cuban? It was
63.
60, whenever it was. You
63,
remember when
yeah.
okay, that. There would have been some we've crossed a line since then to where it would be able to be seen with the weapons, and their weapons beyond nuclear, their weapons, wave weapons, and other kinds of things that the security state is developing in order to reify outdated notions of political competition.
But those
and so
weapons are being made so that they can give up the nuclear weapons and control us with non-lethal weapons, wave stuff that can
that's what I'm saying.
So that's even worse in a way.
But the point being, if I can make the point, and I may be all wrong and everything, but you got that. When you get to the point where we can make that's capability. It's there. We did not have that in our early lifetime, you and I,
said
or
that.
did even.
We both said that.
So there's been a change at that level, existential.
Right.
Okay, and that
With the bomb.
process of Mr. Einstein would go and write the theory of relativity. People would think, and they would do that, and they would develop, and all the geopolitical things were built.
But that's what changed everything.
James Joyce said, Daedalus say, history is a nightmare from which we're attempting to awaken. Okay, now that is one thing, a vector. Destructive. What on the positive side?
The march.
No. More comprehensive, if I could.
Yeah.
What on the positive side would be existentially as equally significant at a level of capability for the human society within an ecological order that is equally existentially significant, by which we could get a template for an operating manual for spaceship Earth that is liberating rather than annihilating?
Sustainable energy, the sun.
You think sustainable
living
energy?
off the sun and the wind and the tides.
Well, that's good for your.
That's totally healthy and clean, and that doesn't do any damage to the earth.
Oh, you think that would do it?
That's free.
You think that would do it?
So that there'd be no poverty.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, and you wouldn't have to fight over oil resources or minerals. I mean, you would just be like. You'd be living in the abundance, or whatever that book is about.
That book,
but we have an abundance. We do.
Well, then now you're getting close to saying something that existentially and
but we have that all right now.
No, we didn't have it.
We have it now.
We didn't have that capability to make the world. Now, how about translating that into systems thinking? How about we have a capability like they can measure. What does it mean to be a Homo sapien have? What does it mean to be a have-not?
I'm not with you. I don't know where you're going.
How about that we have at the level of capability, with technological capability, and the robotization now is going, it's undercutting the basis of economic theorizing and so forth that have applied to a world where there wasn't nearly enough. That we may have, as a species, on this planet, transcended material scarcity as an ontological reality.
We have. That's what Bucky Fuller told us.
Did you ever hear anybody mention it?
Buckminster Fuller said it all the time.
But I mean,
this is not new.
Within the political class.
But we're mentioning it now when we talk about
you and
solar and wind. No, but not just we.
No, I don't see it being mentioned hardly
there are
anywhere.
people talking about solar and wind and
no, those are some pieces of technology
that we can live with the abundance of the earth.
No, it isn't modeled. It isn't modeled anywhere.
It is being
No, where
discussed.
is it modeled?
Amory Lovins is talking about it. Jeremy Rifkin is talking about it.
I wouldn't say so. I know Jeremy.
Fuller talked about
Fuller is one possible.
No, this is not new.
No,
this is like now it's ready.
It is new.
No, it was old, but we're ready to hear it.
To transcend material, there is enough. There never has been. Never has been enough.
Always was
no,
enough.
there hasn't always been. There was not enough electricity to light light bulbs in 1900. There was an evolutionary gestating
But who said
period.
we needed not light bulbs in 1900?
You don't think there's been progress?
I don't know.
What I'm trying to say is,
I don't know if you could call that progress.
The only thing, if
That's the thing is, like, we've always had enough, but we always wanted more. Now we're at the point where we see how finite. We were in a different consciousness because we didn't see the earth, because we didn't have the internet. We're in a totally different consciousness now. We can see the gestalt. We can see what's available. We know. We didn't know them. We were like exploring. We were discovering.
Well, thank you. You're beginning to talk in terms, but that the existential reality is something new that makes it possible. We're transcending our period of Homo sapien existence in universe. It's not another political thing where the good guys win over the bad or something. It is a thing that would include everybody, and it would include everybody in a liberated order.
But that's always been part of the religious philosophy, the political philosophy, that everybody's equal, that we're all going to live together.
Yeah, and the religious philosophy.
But we've never been able to achieve it.
Those are absolutist things that are not synergetic.
But we've always had a vision of being one in the body of Christ, or that we're all united, or that we're all in the same spirit.
Those are part of creation stories that underblade a political class.
But now we got the physical reality to make that possible. We are one on the internet. I mean, we're all connected with information. We were never connected to everybody. When we came over and took America, we just, went and killed all the Indians.
Right.
We weren't connected.
We're still leading.
But now we're connected.
But we're surrounded, Alice. We're surrounded by all these institutions, thought patterns, creation stories, fighting each other, and all these kind of things that were all predicated upon a condition, essentially, in a material sense, there's not nearly enough. For one to win, somebody else has to. That's what has.
But we now know we don't have that.
But it's never mentioned. It's never mentioned or brought up.
I'm mentioning it.
No. But I mean among the political class.
Well, of course, that's why we're having this program.
Yeah, but now what they're going to do is argue about one issue within that. But the
larger
one
issue?
Global warming or any one issue.
It doesn't matter. Pick an issue. It all comes to the same thing, that there's enough. If it's poverty, if it's energy, if it's education, take it on a very Earth-like, not so high up basis.
You want to get it
that
high
there's
up.
enough for everybody. That's the point. There's enough food.
Is there
enough
anything
energy,
unique? Why should we be doing that when we haven't done it 200 years ago? Why didn't we have everybody liberated to have access to all the world?
Why do we keep going back to this?
Well, because
we never saw the Earth, because we didn't have the internet, because we didn't have the technology that could harness the sun for everybody and the wind. We started with whale oil, and then oil and coal, and now we can harness the sun. I mean, for everybody, it's all over the planet. It's not just in a hole in the ground that somebody owns, or that you got to fight over.
Well, that's something good.
It's everybody. It belongs to all of us.
You've inherited a political and economic system where you have a public sector and a private sector. You have private sector, private property, all of that. Do you want to do away with the private sector?
We're going to have to figure out new ways.
Have it all in the government? And
I don't know.
No.
I think my personal thought. I think that you can have entrepreneurial spirit and earn, earn stuff and everything, but you shouldn't have corporations that limit liability, because like the Dutch West India Corporation that started 500 years ago was the first corporation where they had limited liability, so they could rape and pillage and plunder, and nobody was responsible. I think you could have an entrepreneurial spirit, but you have to be personally responsible for any pollution, for any danger you cause people.
Externalities, they call them.
You don't make them. You internalize the externalities. You got to internalize the externalities.
Well, that's what they had. That's a song. You got to accentuate the positive.
Internalize the externalities.
Right. All right.
No,
anyway,
I think so. That's just my thought. I mean, but it's the system has to evolve. It can't be this corporate system that we have now that's now
Well, are we going
driving an arms
Yeah.
race and wars and
they're fighting
corporate
over their various
pollution.
creation stuff.
And what about the GMOs and the factory farms, the
Well-
terrible things we're doing? I mean, these are all corporations
Yeah.
that aren't responsible.
Okay, well, I just think
So-
we ought to get to something like an operating manual for spaceship. But one of the things we ought to do, since we're talking, we started talking about the march, right? And I think, Melanie, if you're in the booth, maybe we have something, a little thing that would give people, maybe there's some people who didn't see it, but we could put a little clip for a couple, 3 or
great.
4 minutes up
It
if
was
she
so
can run
wonderful
that.
to see.
Let's see if they can run it. There's a piece from RT, Russian television, that we happen to get. And if it works, and Melanie, if it gets to where it can't work, but if you can run it at any time now, if you can run it. And if you can't, just let us know and then we'll continue. But
By the way, there was very little of it on AT, American television, because they're all dominated by the fossil
okay, here
fuel
we go.
corporations.
Here, pump it in here if you can. Melanie, the sound.
It's an endless sea of people, and it's really hard to say. It's probably tens of thousands
Jeez, it's
participating.
just
Now,
not
this march
It's
is
just a general
Well,
thing to
with the
show all the
summit
There was-
on
there
23rd
was
of
like-
September, held by the world leaders within the UN General Assembly, dedicated to climate problems. And this summit in the UN is described as historic, but this march here is deemed as historic as well. People are trying to draw the attention to the environmental issues. This rally has been heavily advertised for several weeks. Seeing like banners and advertisements in the New York subway, on the streets, so the attendance, the huge attendance, is not a surprise at all. We do have information that the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is taking part in this march as well. So the mission of these people to draw attention to the environmental issues of the planet is certainly working, as we can see. Lots of different banners here, from banning offshore oil exploration to fracking. Some of these banners have been in fact political. We just saw a banner describing President Obama as the fracking president. So all the issues discussed here, all the issues that the people are trying to draw attention to, it's all about the environment, it's all about the global warming. And this is definitely not the end of the story, because as we've heard, the Occupy Wall Street movement veterans will be gathering on Monday at the Wall Street area to protest against corporations destroying environment, as they call it. So there is a risk of the people being arrested there, but of course we'll be there to monitor the situation and bring you the latest news as we get it. Alexei Rashevsky, RT, reporting from New York City.
Okay, we got that. That's from our friends over at Russian TV. Russian TV is pretty good. I watch it quite a lot.
Yeah,
And
I've been on
too.
it. They call me a lot.
I
'Cause
know
I'm
you're
talking-
on a lot, right?
Because I talk about how we're
Ukraine.
treating Russia unfairly.
Yeah, right. I couldn't agree with you. Who's the fellow that writes so well for that on Ukraine?
I'm not sure.
From he's over the guy who's with the left. The guy from Cole. Cole.
I don't know. Juan Cole?
No, the guy who writes so well on that and is from NYU, I think.
I was at the march,
Yeah.
I was with Code Pink. We had, Code Pink is a women's group
Yeah, the
that
drone.
started after 9/11.
That's
when
Medina,
they,
isn't it?
When they had, remember they had Code Orange and Code Yellow and Code Red Alert after 9/11. So these women started this, Medea Benjamin.
Yeah, God bless her.
Wear
The
Code
drones,
Pink
too.
for peace.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're taking on the drones
Yeah,
now
right.
also.
That's another little
I
dystopic
mean,
thing going.
we've killed over 2,000 civilians. Some
With
guy
drones?
is sitting at his computer in Colorado,
Uh-huh.
at his laptop
Yeah.
with his joystick,
Right.
assassinating people.
Yeah.
And then they're so upset that we see these 2 beheadings on television. But what about all the other killings that's going on? You
What
know?
about what took place at Gaza?
Fifty
What did you think
poison.
of that when they
It was
were putting
terrible.
Gaza down?
Terrible.
I mean, that
And
was.
we rearmed them immediately.
Yeah,
Israel.
right. So there's some problems left.
Yeah, no, I mean, the problem, I think, is here. We're the heart of the empire. As you were saying, there's always been an elite, like you start with Nebuchadnezzar. I mean, the elite now is the U.S. and its allies.
Well, I was only making
And-
that point to say it's not so different than history.
Right, but we're
trying
at
to
the
say it's
end
different.
of that. We can't have that anymore
Because the weapons
planet
are
can't-
species lethal.
The weapons and the planet, the climate can't take it. There's
Okay.
2 existential crises. Jonathan Shell, his last essay.
God, I love Jonathan
In the New
Shell.
Yorker,
Remember
he-
82?
Yeah, but
million people.
in the New Yorker,
Yeah.
he was interviewed by Bill McKibben.
Yeah,
He started
yeah.
this 350.
Bill McKibben's behind 350.
Just before
yeah.
he died,
Mm.
and he talked about the two existential crises: nuclear weapons and climate
Absolutely,
change.
that
And
book was just
we
amazingly
are facing
prescient.
that now.
Yeah, right.
And
Mhm.
we're really nuclear weapons we're forgetting about, but right now we're poking the bear in the eye right now with Russia. So
Yeah.
this is very dangerous.
Well, it goes back, I guess. I don't know what it goes back to, but you got people like McCain and that, and they you know, just
People like McCain. What about Obama? Obama's speech at the UN this week
Mhm.
was again making Russia wrong for Ukraine and everything. We have a petition going at
Yeah.
rootsaction.org.
At what?
Rootsaction.
Roots, R-U-T?
ROOTS,
Oh,
like
roots,
grassroots,
roots,
action.org,
Okay.
asking for an impartial inquiry into the airplane crash in Ukraine
Oh,
and the
yeah.
events leading up to it, because the Dutch now have turned the evidence over to the British, and we still don't know what happened to that airplane. And
Mm.
we keep saying Russia shot it down,
Yeah.
and we don't really know whether that's true or not.
Well, that's a thing where they're just lobbying. They had there was well, remember George Kennan and the whole thing. We grew up. It was all the major thing was the Cold War against the communists in Russia.
But you know what my experience of Russia was? I mean, I was so afraid of communists growing up. In the 1950s, I went to Queens College, and I was having a conversation with somebody in the cafeteria, and she says, "Here, you should read this," and she gives me this pamphlet, and it says Communist Party of America. And my heart is pounding. I put it in my book bag. I'm so terrified. I go home in the Bronx. I go up to the 8th floor. I walk directly to the incinerator and throw it down the incinerator without looking.
That's not the Alice Slater. That's not the Alice Slater that I'm familiar
that's
with.
That's how scared we were of communists in those days.
Well, speak for
McCarthy.
yourself. I
Well,
never
we
was.
were.
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah.
And then I went to Russia in 1989 because of my anti-nuclear work.
Yeah.
And Gorbachev had just instituted perestroika, and glasnost. He was experimenting with democracy. And I noticed every guy in Russia over 60 was walking around with his World War II medals on his chest. And every street corner had a memorial to the dead. And you go to the Leningrad cemetery, there are like 200,000 mass graves from the Nazi siege of Leningrad.
That was A43
And
or
they
so. It was
lost,
horrible.
they lost
right.
20 million people to the Nazis.
I would have thought it might be even more than
well,
that.
that's the figure that they put out. And
Yeah, they're the ones who took the
so
brunt
I'm
of it.
looking at this.
And they won the war.
And then my guide says to me, we were being taken around, we were in a delegation. He says, "Why don't you Americans trust us?" And I said, "Why don't we trust you? What about Czechoslovakia? What about Hungary? Why should we trust you?" And he looks at me and he says, "But we had to protect our borders from Germany." And I looked at him, and he was telling me his truth. Like they took over Eastern Europe, and they weren't going to let go because they got so slaughtered by the Nazi onslaught. They were like defending themselves.
Yeah, it was
but
horrible.
in our country, we were being told they were coming after us, and that wasn't true.
Well, that was all
Stalin asked Truman to turn the bomb over to the UN after, that's in the record. Do you know we fired the historian at the Smithsonian Congress, fired the historian because they were going to do this exhibit in 1995 on the 50th anniversary of the bomb to show how...
Well, you mean 45?
Yeah, in 1995, they were going to do a 50-year exhibit, and they had historians. They had letters from Omar Bradley to Truman saying, "Don't drop the bomb. Japan's getting ready to surrender." They had letters from Churchill to Truman, "Hurry up and drop the bomb so we don't have to divide Asia with Stalin," because they were first finishing the European front. And they had all these exhibits that were going to go and show the whole story about the atomic bomb and how Stalin wanted to turn it over to the UN, and we made it difficult.
I hadn't heard that,
Well,
but
no,
okay, go on.
there's letters and documents. And the Congress fired the historian at the Smithsonian and never allowed that exhibit to show. And there's a book, Hiroshima Shadow, with two historians, Kai Bird and Larry Lipschitz, that have all the exhibits that would have been in there to show all the stuff, there was a scientist that quit Los Alamos. They were building the bomb, a lot of them, because they were afraid Germany was going to get it first.
Yeah.
And when they knew Germany wasn't going to get it, Dr. Joseph Rotblat, he said, let's stop. And they said, no, we're going to keep building it. And he quit. He got the Nobel Peace Prize years later for having done that. But, there's a lot of stuff that Americans are not aware of their own history. I mean, if Congress could fire the Smithsonian director, so we shouldn't know about this. But the point being that Hillary Clinton this year compared Putin to Hitler. And that is so terrible for a woman that thinks she's going to be president of the United States.
She probably will be.
When they lost 20 million Russians to the Nazis, to compare him to Hitler is like so impolitic and undiplomatic. And now what we're doing with Ukraine, and we're having NATO troops marching in Ukraine. They're doing maneuvers there, and we're putting more troops into Eastern. Why are we doing this?
Well, what? Yeah, right.
And we're doing it in Asia too. We're beefing up Japan. Japan is giving up their peace constitution, Article 9, where they promise not to have an army. We're pressuring them to give it up. Mm-hmm. And this nobody knows. China and Russia, since 2008, have proposed a treaty to keep weapons out of space at the UN, to negotiate it. And this summer they tabled another draft, an improved draft, and the U.S. blocks it. They need consensus to talk about it. We block it. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't we want to?
Why would we? Why?
Because we have military-industrial complex.
Yeah, right.
That's what Eisenhower said.
Yeah.
We don't want to. We think we're going to stay ahead of them.
Yeah.
I mean, we are dumb.
Well, if you mean we, I mean it's
the U.S. and its allies.
The U.S. and its allies.
NATO.
And
Japan.
And that's what emerged out of the Second War and everything. We won,
But so?
And then that's geostrategy, and you have the geostrategic thinking. And it's all being done within, don't forget, the context that it's all being done is zero sum. That's what I was trying to get at before, on the adverse side of the destruction. It is no longer zero sum. That is, if it's zero sum, there's winners and losers. You want to be a winner. Because if you're a winner, then you get to be the king in the castle, and you want to make sure you're not the loser.
But now everybody's a loser.
No. But you see, the difference between there and then and now is that we have, if it's true, it should be headlines. Collectively, we have transcended material scarcity. There is enough for all, and that is an emerging reality at the level of capability, equally significant to the destruction, and it's never brought up in any terms that have any effect on policy. That's an issue. But
in our march, we had a whole section called Solutions, where people were talking about
But they are solutions about global warming or specific issues that are going to argue what you got. And you know what you have to include? You have to have some, if you're really serious or intellectually serious, you have to have something that doesn't just get a position where you find the bad guy and overcome them. You have to have something, and this is what's really hard. You have to have something that's going to include everybody, including the bad guys.
Exactly.
Now that's something.
That's a good point.
And to do that is
I have a solution
if
for this.
It's easier to do that if it's realized by one and all, by public relations or something. There is enough and more. We've got abundance now. That is the capability, if we get right way of forming capital and the right way of distributing demand. That's why Piketty is such a thing in the thorn in the side. They don't have a way of distributing effective demand to clear the market of what can be done ecologically.
I have another thought.
They need to have a different economic theory and political theory for operating
But it's coming up. I mean, that's
what
you have Naomi Klein and Piketty and other
people.
I
don't see it. I just see climate. That's just another issue to get a political
They're talking about
position.
Food. They're talking about health. They're talking about everything.
Well, they see that all. Well, okay. Anyway,
it's not just climate.
Well,
but I have.
All right.
But as far as getting the bad guys in on it, I agree with you, and I think that South Africa showed us the way. They had that Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and people hated each other. I mean, and they were able to overcome years of enmity and hatred by allowing people to just come and say, I made a mistake. I'm sorry.
Well, then how
and
do
go.
we deal with the
and
people
that's
who
what
made
we
the
got to do
how
with
do
our
we do,
guys.
How do we deal with the guys who have made a mistake? The people who have
We
had
have
it.
truth
How
and
did we
reconcil-
deal with something where for 200 years this great republic, supposedly under the end of hereditary houses in Europe and everything, had a thing called chattel slavery with Fugitive Slave Act? How do we apologize for that? How do we incorporate history? How do we incorporate the outdated institutions, including our institutions, our way of thought, everything, in order to accommodate to a future that we have to relate to, which is transcendent of scarcity collectively?
South Africa showed us the way.
Well, okay, if you
that
think
was
so.
like a brilliant thing that we haven't used as a model. I mean, we wound up with the Nuremberg trials, right?
Well,
that was Victor's justice.
That's just Victor's justice.
Right,
that's history.
I know, but South Africa had a new model that I think we should. I've been talking about it quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because
that was Mandela.
You know, like you have and it was a whole new idea. Like, just come forth and say you're sorry.
There's a lot of
make
injustice in South Africa and the rest of Africa.
I know, but
it didn't
they
work
would have
so
had
well,
a
did
blood. It worked very well. They
Well-
would have had a bloodbath. They would not have had a government if they had putting people in jail for crimes and everything. They let everybody go free. It's not perfect.
Well, we should let our
mean,
bankers go free then, and the people
Well,
who
we
have
did
caused
that.
the ret
We did
No,
that.
we haven't. No, well, is it all right? Was it a
No,
good
one
thing?
banker went
Was
to
it a
jail.
good thing, given the historical conjecture? You got all kinds of buildings, you have institutions, you have structures, you have all kinds of thoughts about everything like that we've inherited. That is the reality, and we have to encompass the reality and transform it. Now, so then there's people responsible for the reality. If you're trying to do it politically, you get rid of the bad guy instead of the good guy. But the bad guy, none of them are figuring it in terms of, we're going to have a liberated order where everybody can realize their full potential. So if the National Security Agency knows everything about you, which is inevitably coming, it's going to come, they're going to know everything. It's going to be like 100 trillion cells in a human organism. Every cell matters, and every cell is in total connection with all the other cells that make up a system. We're going to get to that. When you have a system that's in order, will be a resonancy of a liberated order, which is our capability equal existentially to the destruction, that will accommodate us to the universe to a level transcendent to what we've been throughout the human experience. We're speciating. And that's never brought up. It's only just reifying the outdated political institutions.
Right now, we have to stop the wars, get rid of the weapons, clean up the climate, and maybe then we can,
deal with
what you're talking. I'm just talking about interim steps. Like first
that's
step.
true.
We got to
what
do the baby step, because when we do that, then we'll be clear to think in these new ways. But we have very practical next steps, like getting solar, wind, getting everybody off dirty fuel, getting the weapons put away. Letting the bad guys go, forgiving them.
No,
with
including
no,
the bad guys in the new way where
where
it's beneficial to them, and it's also in
send them to the Bahamas. Whatever.
No,
you're
going to assume they're bad, but they're not bad. They're living a life, and what
they are bad.
No, you want them to be bad. Okay, if you
The
want to keep
Koch brothers
them.
are bad.
Well, no, they're not bad. They're just
buying the government. They're corrupting with money. That's not the democratic ideal.
No, the democracy. It's not a democracy.
But we have our ideal.
One of the there's a lot of tyrannies. Listen, Alice, I'm sorry. I'm the host of this program.
All right.
And there's tyrannies in television, and the tyranny is you run out of time. We've run out of time. We've got to say goodbye to the audience.
Did we run out of time before we said this?
Okay, thanks, darling. Okay. So good talking to you. Alice Slater, an economist, World Beyond War. That's a good idea. That's not a bad idea.
We didn't even talk about that.
Do you think we should maybe get to that?
Definitely.
Okay, your pleasure, Ever Perception. Thank you, darling, for coming in for such a very, very well light after continues. And it's so good to talk to you and everything like that. So we invite you to tune in. We'll be coming back again tomorrow to pick up on this evolutionary process called television development. And thanks again, Alice, so very, very much. See you tomorrow. Thanks for viewing.
Thank you.
So that's it, 58.